Welcome back to Cryptocurrents, where we interview and discuss the most interesting projects, people, and events happening in Web3. We're your hosts, Brett Lindstrom and
Jacq Brett.
And we're the founders of Fish and Chips, a creative studio delivering compelling design, branding, messaging, and community to the whole of Web3. Before we get started, please remember to smash that like and subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us out a ton. Today, we have Kevin Jones, the developer relations engineer over at The Graph. Kevin, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm really excited for this episode. So, Kevin, it's been a minute since we got to chat in person. Why don't we talk about our history a little bit, get into some of the fun stuff, and then we can kick off a little bit more about what the graph is and all that stuff. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
cool,
been a while,
man.
so it's great to catch up.
Yeah. So we met working on a project called Fed Fighter, and it was kind of a project, a fun comic-based project with this like superhero, like Captain Satoshi, and he was like fighting against the power and like teaching people about the Federal Reserve and like talking about burning USDC and all this cool stuff that had this really interesting tie-in with kind of like what was happening and all that stuff with the SEC attacking crypto. And it was like this little like, like this joke of we're fighting back with this cool little comic book thing. I don't know, man. What did you think about that project? It kind of fizzled out a little bit, but I feel like it might resurge soon.
I think we need to, rejuvenate that. Yeah. It's funny because I met Brent at like East Denver. I think it was like 3 years ago it's been. And he's like, dude, I'm going to tell you about this project. And he was so excited about it. And I just kind of could feel that like energy, and I'm like, man, that sounds awesome. I definitely want to check that out.
Right.
And I think at the time I was actually a photographer. I was just shooting photos for East Denver.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I was like kind of volunteering. This was even before I really fully stepped into crypto. And me and Brent hit it off because he had the same values as me. I feel like that's what got me into like the space. I feel like a lot of people go through that thing where they're like seeing how bad that the government is with our money and like seeing how like kind of doomed we are if we don't like take control of that stuff and realize like how it really works. And so I think that's what made the project so interesting to me. And I think it does need to be revitalized. Let's figure it out how we're going to do it. Maybe he needs to be an AI agent now,
That would be cool, man. That would be really cool. Yeah, we should hit up Brent and start that up again. Umer too. And we'll give them a shout out. Shout out to Brent and Umer. When you watch this video, you'll have a little cookie in there for you. Jacq, you want to jump into some of your questions about the graph and Kevin?
Well, yeah, you know that I am a lover of infrastructure, so obviously the graph is interesting. I love that you were a volunteer at East Denver, actually. I volunteered recently for DevCon. It was interesting because I wasn't quite sure who I would find in that group of people, and you do find a lot of OGs who've been doing it forever, but there's a lot of people who get onboarded into the ecosystems of events through volunteer work, which is interesting. Before I ask you more questions about the graph, what what inspired you to volunteer in the industry?
For me, this was like post-COVID. And during COVID, I had kind of like gone through this like journey where I was starting to realize about like smart contracts and what they were. And like I started getting really involved in building and like understanding how to write Solidity. And at the time, I was going to all the ETH global hackathons online. It was kind of like my like lifeline. Like it's kind of jokingly, I had my family, obviously. I was like in a house and everyone was on lockdown. But like from like a perspective of like really getting involved, ETH Global gave me that opportunity. So I had kind of made it a mission that after everything started opening up again, that I was going to try to volunteer and help out and give back to the community because I had gotten so much. And so the first conference that happened pretty much after that was ETH Denver. And so, I just wanted like, what is my skill that I have, and that was basically photography and content creation. Like I actually had a podcast and I had my own YouTube channel up. So I figured I'd volunteer and like give back. And so I did that for a while, actually. I was ETH Global's main photographer for about a year, actually, while I was even giving workshops at the hackathon. So, and I think that in the crypto space, there's a lot of people like that lend like two aspects. They have a creative side and they also have a very technical, and they understand that the crypto is a solution to problem, right? And so, I think that was just my whole thing, is I just wanted to give back and get involved in another way that I could provide value. Yeah.
We also had Chad Huggins, director of community at Say Foundation, also have a similar conversation about like the intersection of the arts and crypto, and there's a lot of overlap there. So it's interesting to hear you come from that because you're now a developer relations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the time, I had been starting to dabble in like Solidity, and I started getting highly involved in the Build Guild or the Biddle Giddle, depending on how you want to say it, community. So I'm still a core member of the Build Guild, and I support Scaffold ETH. I do a lot of like DevRel type stuff for Build Guild, supporting Scaffold ETH, which is like a toolkit for building on Ethereum. Anyone who like doesn't know that should check that out.
Yeah, I love it.
Go through speedrunethereum.com and just you'll learn everything you need.
Yes.
But then I actually became a graph advocate along that journey, and I started learning about the graph. And, previous to working in crypto, I worked in infrastructure. I used to work for Nginx, which is the number one web server pretty much on the planet. And so I've always had a love for infrastructure and like understanding how that works. And so for me, it was like the graph was a need, like just the way to go in terms of like Web3 and providing some value, because I understand how important that aspect of the business is. And that'll help us scale, right, to more users if we can kind of address the data problem with Web3.
It's funny that there's an overlap of artistic, tendencies and infrastructure, because these are two very polarizing things. But I find more and more the deeper I dive into this world of infrastructure that there is this intersection of these artistic people. And maybe it's because, and this is just maybe me waxing poetic, but maybe it's because artists can see something that's there before it's there. And while they're building infrastructure, you're still sort of imagining something. Anyway, also now I love your dramatic lighting even more so, because now I understand that you're a photographer and you
That's
understand
awesome.
the importance of lighting.
It's amazing. It's like coming out of the shadows, but like, the nobility of
Absolutely.
of
You look like an
Dude,
angel.
And also, like, I don't know if you know this. You don't know this because you were being humble about it too. Kevin, you're a DJ, right? You're like actively involved in music and whatnot. Kevin is like amazing. Like, it's like one of those people that has like, he's a Renaissance tech.
You're making me
Not
blush.
all heroes wear capes. There you go.
Yeah.
You do it
Actually,
all.
my DJ table is right here, so this is where I
Dude,
DJ.
I love it so much. That was
Wait,
one
why aren't crypto companies hiring you to DJ their events?
Yeah, I think it's something I should shoot for in 2025. I actually went to like a Farcaster event, and in Santa Monica, it was like FarCon last year.
FarCon, I was
there.
there.
Was a bunch of DJs there, like that were like, hackers. Like,
yeah,
we should figure out how to collab, man. We should figure out how to collab on that, because I'm a vocalist as well. I think there would be a really cool way for us to like. There's not too many Web3 musicians that are really popping. Like there's people that have come from Web. I don't even want to say Web 2 because they're not even in Web 2.
Chad music.
They're just like Snoop Dogg came over and launched like an NFT. I don't consider that like new stuff.
Yeah. No,
just
there's
people
stuff
moving
like
over.
There are like people that are Web3 famous in their own niche, and then there's like Latasha that's sort of like both of those, but there
needs to be like a movement.
The infrastructure, well, this is another podcast, but the infrastructure for music, I could talk a lot about that stuff. We'll get into the music discussion in a minute.
All right, so the graphs tech is super innovative and extremely necessary, right? Pretty much all of crypto, like if you look behind every single project practically, you will see that graph icon, which I love, by the way. So how do you boil down, the graph into like exactly what it is? If someone was new, how would you break it down? And what would be a reason for them to really pay attention to the project, Kevin?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it boils down to one thing, and that's just that data is a very important aspect of like all of technology. And I think in order to stick to the ethos of like what Web3 is, decentralization, openness, censorship resistant, and like building on top of those kind of things, there's no one else that does what we do, what the graph does, right? The graph is this decentralized network that provides an open way for developers to build these APIs called subgraphs that will conform to whatever, kind of schema or collection of data that they need to in a very, like I said, open and censorship resistant, decentralized way, right? And so, there's a lot of like data solutions out there for Web3 that people could use, a lot of centralized options. But when it comes down to it, the graph is sticking to decentralization as the prime factor for moving forward, with data on the blockchain. And so I think that's what's most important. And then on top of that, we're coming up with new and interesting ways to innovate, which we can dive into. But I think that right now, it is the de facto way. Like if you're building an app, you need this middleware layer to easily kind of like hook up to your front end or whatever it is to get the data that you need from your blockchain and smart contracts.
Yeah.
When I've talked about the graph with other members of the team before in the past, I've always liked the ethos of the builders for the builders. The people who started this saw a gap in the market when they were trying to build an app themselves on Ethereum. And so that's what brings this here into fruition, into this whole ecosystem. And I think it's like wild to think about how big it's expanded from that, like, oh, I just need a solution, because then it goes into all the way down to like the governance of everything. And so I want to dive a little bit deeper into sort of the subgraphs. Is it still that there's sort of like a curator role in that as well? Or maybe you can talk a little bit more about how that works for people who aren't familiar with the graph and the formation of subgraphs and sort of like their importance in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's lots of ways that anyone who wants to get involved with the graph can participate. There's a bunch of ways. The first way, which is probably the backbone to the graph, is the indexer stack, right? The indexers are providing storage, they're providing their infrastructure to consolidate, to basically store the data for the subgraph. And they do this by basically providing some stake. So like a security mechanism called like an indexer stake. That keeps them from acting in a way that's like, not, if they were to like serve malicious data or like lie about what's on there, they would get slashed. And so there's the mechanism there. There's also delegators that can just like provide stake to the network to secure it. But then there's also developers who can create new subgraphs for, smart contracts or for dApps on the network. There's over 100 chains that we support. And then on top of that, there's curators. So curators you can think of as people that provide some value into a subgraph, and then they can earn a portion of the query fees that come off of that subgraph. So we call it signaling. So it's kind of like a way for you to identify like what subgraph is kind of a little bit more useful or a little bit more recognized on the network. Additionally, the indexers, they get query fees, and they also get indexing rewards. So there's lots of different ways that you can participate. And I think that's the beauty of the graph, is it's a community system where everyone has to cooperate and work together. And it works really well like that.
Just out of curiosity, how many iterations did it take to come to this sort of foundation? Because I find it so well thought out, and it really serves the community that you're targeting. So was it a kind of like a back and forth conversation with the community? Was it a little bit of this and that? I know that some of the more advanced governance models in the DAOs that I'm in, it takes a little while to kind of do that adjusting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that process like?
Well, I think the initial deployment of the graph, this was again before my time working here, but I think it was fairly kind of set in stone in like how the network would work and operate in the initial version of the protocol. We are looking to make some changes to the protocol. So we're going through some iterations and ideas of how we can make it a little bit simpler and like easier to interact with. And so, the way that we do that is, people can create proposals on the forums, and they can basically kind of like vote on that. So it is very governance focused. And I think that the community kind of believes in, a lot of the existing talent, and like people on the board for the graph, like really understand how to make it successful. I think that, there's a lot of trust in the graph community because they've done such a good job over the last, few years in like creating the protocol and establishing the network and keeping it running and keeping it kind of like in a great working condition and constantly extending and adding functionality and stuff like that. So so I think the governance aspect is not difficult with the graph. I think, like I said, the community is very much interested in possibly even making the network as best as it can be. And so, a lot of that, if anyone always want to get involved, you can go on the forums and you can read the proposals. There's a really good one right now, which is the GRC20 spec, which is really interesting. And that's Yaniv, who's co-founder, talking about knowledge graphs and a new way to like store data and possibly eventually enabling write access to the graph. And so there's a lot of cool stuff you should check out if you want to learn more about the protocol.
That's awesome. And in general, I will advise anyone who's interested in the very cutting edge and or governance to just check out forums of your favorite project in general, because that's where all the alpha is.
And all right, so you guys have already made like crazy strides, right? And gotten huge adoption, and you've done it all in just a few years. So like, what's next? Where are you guys planning to expand, and where do you hope to kind of go from here? And what are some of the other projects that you've used? Name a couple big projects that you have put together or that have used your tech so far.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of start with the kind of like where we're going and, what we've done in the past, 6 months to a year, and kind of that can kind of show you the direction of the graph. As you know, the graph has been very successful in launching a developer community and a network. And originally we had what was called the hosted service, where we could like store subgraphs that were kind of like, like a freemium type model. Anybody could store that data there. And we did that for a long time. I think about 2.5 years, we had the hosted service. And so about a year ago, a little more, we started the process of shifting off of that. And so fully making everything decentralized. And so we migrated all the data from the hosted service to the decentralized network. And so that was a huge task in itself, because we literally had to kind of get everyone involved and like support all the dApps along the journey to move to the network, and make sure that nobody got left behind, and the network was highly effective in that environment. On top of that, there's been a lot of strides being made in like how indexing performance can be increased. And so some of the things you've seen is like substreams and substreams powered subgraphs. So substreams is like a whole new way of like doing indexing, where you're essentially getting like raw bytes in and bytes out and doing processing of that data in more composable manner, right? And so substreams are super powerful, and anyone who wants to do more than what the graph, maybe subgraphs can do for them, substreams is great. So we're going to keep focused on that. We're also coming up with new ways to support other channels of people using the data. So we're trying to come up with new tooling for developers to make it easier for them to maybe do machine learning or some type of analytics on the data, right? And so there's some interesting strides we're going to be making there in the next year. And then on top of that, just, we've realized that the graph is a very highly used developer platform, right? And if they're building a smart contract, they're probably not too far off from going to the graph. And so there's probably some opportunity there where we can like help support them in doing things like interacting with IPFS or making it a more friendly experience for the developer. So developer experience is like another really high priority of the graph right now. And then as far as success go, like pretty much all major DeFi protocols use the graph because, there's, as we all know, the blockchain is a little bit of a mess of transactions and it's hard to sift through. And so for DeFi, like the graph is super powerful. So Uniswap is one of our cherished customers. They've done such a great job at like building that. We also have like Aave. And then most recently, what I've been super excited about is the AI agent narrative. There's a lot of platforms using us. And one of the ones I really love is CreatorBid. Like they have just such great marketing and they're just such a cool platform where anyone can launch an AI agent. And so they're a great customer of ours and they're really pushing the network really well. And yeah, so I'm excited to see more of the AI narrative stuff come up. And yeah, pretty much, like I said, any popular protocol is probably at some point going to need to explore using something like the graph in some manner.
I went to a DevCon talk on indexing. There was just some optimization talk on indexing. And I really thought like I'd be one of a few people in there, but it was actually packed. I was very happily surprised. Indexing is something that developers think about a lot. This is a not prepared question, but I wonder, like, as you came from a more of a traditional background, how much of that need for indexing translated?
I think like, and like traditionally at like my previous job, I was a site reliability engineer for a long time. So I was managing production. So I had a little bit of touch base on everything from like load balancing to web servers to databases to, user experience. Like it was kind of a very broad spectrum. And then when I moved to Nginx, I was working with a lot of like HTTP and TCP IP related protocols. And I think that's what kind of got me interested in the graph when I started working on Ethereum, is because we all know that like blockchains are great databases. They're, highly trustworthy, or they're incentivized by like writing to the blockchain with gas and like, but when it comes to reading, there's just not a lot of infrastructure. Like the RPCs are not really designed for getting data. So for me, for my journey, it was like, well, like yeah, the blockchain is a database, but when it comes down to it, like you need something to get that data out and make it in a more like conformable manner of like how you want to deal with the data. So that was my whole thing. I guess from my experience, the graph just really solved that, like I said, middleware layer.
Maybe building upon that, just a little bit more about your role as developer relations. It's like a little bit of community, it's a little bit of education, it's a little bit of content creation, it's a little bit of everything, right? So they're really kind of the jack of all trades. I kind of want to know a little bit more about what initiatives or what programs or anything like this that you're sort of building at the graph to specifically help with builders in terms of like upskilling, education, or just getting them involved in the community with open source projects or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a couple of things. Like I started and founded the Graph Builders Office Hours, which is a thing that happens every Thursday. I believe right now it's like 9 a.m. Pacific to 10 a.m. Pacific. Marcus leads that now. Marcus is my coworker and just phenomenal human being, by the way. Anyone doesn't know Marcus, you should definitely meet him. And he's really, really great. Brings on all sorts of different speakers from different protocols that we work with, which I think like with the Web3, like we all have to be very like in tune with each other. Like all the protocols need to like work together, and that's because it's decentralized by nature. And so we try to do a really good job of that. Marcus is great about bringing on people that are like highly relevant and like integrating with the graph. And then, also showcasing like how they're using the graph. So that's exciting. Definitely recommend you guys check that out. We have like the normal ways you can get involved, like Discord, we have Telegram, we have the forums, but there's so much new stuff that I'm working on. I'm working on a really cool tool. It's called the Graph Builders Basecamp. And I think anyone here is like technical, I should check it out once it comes out. It's hopefully going to be released by ETH.
That's cool.
But it's inspired by Speedrun Ethereum, and it's a kind of a mission-based space kind of like story where you're like this little astronaut and you have to like make your way to the moon and like establish a token called Moon Token. It did a lot of different fun stuff.
So
but
cool, man.
It tests your ability. Yeah, thank you. It tests your ability on like Solidity and like writing subgraphs, and that's coming out hopefully in a month. And it's, like I said, built on Scaffold ETH, works all decentralized, which is super cool. Like there's no infrastructure. So validation actually happens directly with Chainlink using Chainlink functions. So it's all using the Oracle network. And so you could literally run it on your laptop and it would be able to issue you NFTs for your work. So it's really cool. So that's coming. Yeah, I mean, just in general, we're trying to like, get more involved with AI. Like, the graph has a very like interesting position where it can really be this kind of like RAG-based tool for AI. So like we're going to try to work on some agent actions and integrate with like agent kits maybe in the coming months if we can. And just try to open up that narrative for like how people could use us in the AI space. And so I think that's another thing we're going to be focused on.
Dude, that's
Makes
so
sense
sick.
to me. Makes sense to me. First of all, that's great. I love the storytelling, but also the AI crypto narrative. We'll have to do another entirely other episode on this.
For real.
But
Yeah.
just like the sheer amount of information that comes out of AI, that needs to be, cataloged and put onto some sort of, I don't know, open distributed ledger maybe. And how do you index that information? So there you go. That's really interesting. I'm really glad that the graph is thinking forward and thinking ahead and already getting their hand into this emergent technology.
So guys, are you ready? Are you ready? So every episode, we like to step out of the tech with our guests and get their thoughts on stuff that's happening in the space. So Kevin, what is your spiciest take right now?
Spiciest take. Gosh, this is a tough one, but there's not enough builders focused on building stuff that is going to solve like real world problems. There's a lot of like casino related narratives in a lot of the blockchain space right now. And so it's great. Like it gives people something to do. And I think it does bring on users, but in the end, I think it's a negative narrative. I don't know. Some people say like meme coins and AI agents and all this stuff are like positive because they're going to bring users. But in the end, it's like, there's a small fraction of like people that probably make money on that stuff. And so it's just making the wealthy the wealthier. And so I'd rather see people trying to figure out ways to like work the technologies together to really like solve problems, right? Like how can we like really bump up the narrative of, just utility for crypto, and not as much of the ERC20 tokens and Solana tokens and stuff like that. I'd rather focus on other stuff. So that's my hot take is like, It's a little bit of a casino right now.
Your hot take is build.
I know, I'm so
No. It's cool.
It's true though.
Dude, we were talking about the other day. We were talking about, and we've kind of gotten away from this with like the Solana tokens and like some of the fake AI agent tokens as well. But like back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean like 2020, you had projects like Safe Moon that were pioneering new types of token mechanics, like the yield that was coming back to token holders and the cool integrations of like different smart contracts. And they actually created like a lot of plug and play tools based off of these really unique and new ways. But that seems to have disappeared. Why do you think that is? I can't figure it out. Maybe it's more of a cash grab now, or like it played out and people are kind of like, they're like, if it has that farming, the yield farming portion of it, it turns them off because they're like, okay, well, the dev's obviously getting more every time this transaction happens. What do you think? Why do you think that the like the interesting token mechanics kind of fell off in the last year? Just
I think
curious.
it was the narrative switch of like, you know, politics with crypto kind of like brought in more people that are kind of focused on just making money. Like you said, a little bit of a cash grab type
makes
thing.
sense.
And it's not that the builders aren't there. I know they are because I go to the hackathons and I see them and I talk to them. So I know that they're there. It's just that the other ones are kind of like bleeding out, you know, that's just going to happen. It's just going to happen. So just try to figure out how to go over that hump. And like, we need to figure out ways to like make other use cases shine, you know, and focus on that.
What would be one use case that you would really love to see, like in particular? Like I'll go first. Actually, we'll all go. We'll all take turns. My super exciting thing that I would love to see is supply chain. I know that's so boring, but it would absolutely revolutionize the entire world.
Yeah,
and everything. Yeah. So supply chain on the blockchain as a real world application, I would love to see that. So,
I go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
All you.
Dude, I think anonymous transactions need more play. And I feel like they're gonna get that. I feel like right now regulators are really focused on eliminating that. But as like more regulators and institutions get involved, they're gonna be like, oh crap, we can see everything. Everyone can see everything. And I think they're gonna move towards, you know, back towards the original kind of ethos inadvertently. Like without actually realizing that was the original, you know, the belief behind Bitcoin, belief behind Monero, all like Zcash, all those OG coins that were built on anonymity. It wasn't Verge one of them. Like I was seeing this token, I was seeing this list of like the 2017, 16 tokens. And I was like, that one doesn't exist. That one doesn't. Oh, that one. I remember that icon. That's awesome. And it meant like, it does nothing. Like it's like, just
there's a lot of those
Bitcoin, you know, but yeah, that's my take. More anonymous transaction abilities. Didn't Tornado Cash just weren't they unsanctioned?
They were unsanctioned.
I think they were. That's a good step. I think that's a good step forward. You know, there's plenty of use cases, positive use cases. I think Vitalik highlighted one of them that he like donated. I think the India donation went through Tornado. Something did. Yeah.
I know where it went through, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to like.
No, it's all.
I don't want to change that. I don't want to put focus on them. I mean, I don't know who's going to watch this. You know, it could be someone. In the SEC.
Facts.
I know who it was, and I absolutely love the protocol. And anyone who follows Vitalik knows the protocol as well. And I am very super excited to like see that Tornado Cash came off the sanctions list, and you know we saw Ross Ulbricht get pardoned, and I'm hoping that you know the Tornado Cash devs eventually get let go because it's ridiculous and overstepping their boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't mean to like piggyback on your narrative. It's a great one.
No, it's totally important. It just strengthens it. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of like privacy. If anyone goes to events or wants to follow a community, look at the Web3 Privacy Now community.
Awesome.
They have just an amazing like community and amazing events that they throw and speakers and like topics. And they just announced like a course you can take. So if you go to the Web3 Privacy Now website, you can take a privacy course, which is super awesome.
That is dope.
So piggybacking on that, that's a great idea. But I think my other one, and it's just going to sound stupid, I would just love to see stable coins at banks or stable coins on major things like iPhone. If the iPhone could enable stable coin transfers, I think that would just take us to another level when it comes
Without
to
extraneous fees, Kevin.
without yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
Give
I mean, it
that
wouldn't have to be
caveat.
I mean, I would rather have it with a little small fee than not at all,
True.
because
Yeah.
general like crypto native users probably aren't gonna probably use it, right. They're just gonna still use, but
True.
yeah, I don't know. That's another thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, that would be sick for adoption. Just tap my phone, pay.
Because that's what I want to see. I want more adoption, and I think the easiest way to do it is with stablecoins. It's kind of boring, but stablecoins is like the best like use case for crypto right now, without being too invasive and not degen at all.
No, I think man, that's cool, man. We got plenty of degen content. I think the integration of like DeFi directly with institutions, like MetaMask being able to withdraw directly to your bank minus the fees that like centralized exchanges charge, which is like an absurd amount. Like if you're getting paid, X amount of dollars, like you're losing hundreds of dollars when you cash out from X centralized exchange to your bank. I think it would be amazing if you could get like this isn't a MetaMask shill or a Phantom shill, but like either one of those, like if you could just directly cash out to your business bank. That's where I think the key and what's lacking right now, because I know they're working on a personal banking and cashing out directly to that. But I think institution
baby steps
would be great because you eliminate hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars in fees for companies that are already getting taxed to hell. So, I think that's another really interesting piggyback off of yours that would be super helpful for, I think, all of us that are trying to build here and trying to sustain businesses and DeFi protocols and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because if you're in the EU, and anyone who doesn't know the Punk wallet, Build Guild they have this thing called the Punk wallet.
Amazing.
So you go to punkwallet.io, and if you're in the EU, you can hook it directly to an IBAN and pull from your bank account right into the wallet. That would be amazing to see in the US, but you cannot do that because literally instantly you can like take money out of your bank, you can put it right into the crypto wallet. So
there's living in the Stone Age over here in the US.
I think we might move towards the not Stone Age soon, maybe.
We'll evolve. We'll get there.
We'll see. We don't want too many hot takes right now. we don't want it to get super spicy. This isn't a nacho.
We'll
Sunday.
see. We'll see what happens. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And before we wrap up, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of last minute chill anything you want. Like, how do people get involved? Just anything you want to shout out in terms of the projects you're involved with.
Your DJ name, anything, man.
Yeah,
like,
that's you, please.
This is the shill moment. Like you can shout out, your mom. You can shout out, whoever it is. If you told your friend you're going to be on today, anything, man. This is the shill sesh.
Nice. Okay, cool. So I dropped an AI token. I'm just kidding. All right, so
contract.
I would say follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is cryptomastery_. And I would also say if you're in San Francisco, come to the House of Web3. We have a House of Web3 in Presidio. It's a place where we have events and we have workshops, and it's a great place to co-work. So anyone technical or non-technical in crypto, you can come there and check it out. Please stop by. And if anyone wants to test the Graph Builders Basecamp, please let me know. You can shoot me a DM on Twitter. And I would love to get you an invite to it right now. It's in kind of a beta format, but it'll be released hopefully by Denver, and hopefully everyone can check it out. You'll get a cool NFT for every mission you complete. There's 4 missions right now. So they're really awesome NFTs that are space themed, 8-bit space themed. So highly recommend you check that out and message me. And that's it pretty much. I don't want to chill too much, but that's
cool, man.
Many ways to get involved.
Yeah. And with that, we will end our episode, and you can find him at Crypto Mastery, her at Jacq Faka, and me at Lindstrom Create without an E at the end of the word. Guys, let's keep it popping.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thank you so much, Kevin. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.